Children, I told you mainly 3 types of infrastructure will be discussed in detail in this chapter. One is energy, the second one power, and the third one health. Now first we will move on to energy, and you can remember energy belongs to economic infrastructure. Now energy is important for both production and consumption process. It is a very important infrastructure, right? Now you have learned about energy resources in detail in class 10. Now energy can be divided into commercial and non-commercial sources of energy, conventional and non-conventional sources of energy, and primary and secondary sources of energy. So once again, energy is divided into commercial and non-commercial, conventional and non-conventional, primary and secondary. First we will discuss with commercial and non-commercial energy. Commercial energy, from the name itself it is very clear, commercial purpose. It refers to those sources of energy which command a price, which means we need to give an amount of money to get it. It commands a price. It is a good which commands a price. Example, coal, petroleum, electricity, etc. And they are generally exhaustible, which means they get exhausted when it is used. So it belongs to non-renewable resources, exhausted when it is used. So you have to be very careful while they are using it. Okay? So commercial energy refers to those sources of energy which commands a price. In this, coal and petroleum, to be very careful while we are using, because they generally gets exhausted. Next is non-commercial sources of energy. It refers to those sources of energy which do not command a price. Just opposite of commercial sources of energy, it will not command a price. Okay. Example, firewood, agricultural waste, and dried dung, cow dung. They are renewable and available free of cost. So they are renewable, they can be used again and again. In class 10 you have learned about the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. Renewable resource means what? They can be renewed and used again and again. Non-renewable, once it is used, it will get replenished, isn't it? Now non-commercial sources of energy, they will not command a price, they are available at free of cost. Okay, examples are firewood, agricultural waste, and dried dung. Let us see the difference between commercial and non-commercial sources of energy in a nutshell. Commercial sources, they are exhausted. Then non-commercial sources, they are renewable. Commercial sources of energy, they command a price. Non-commercial sources, generally they are free, but in the present situation, they command a price. In a present situation, firewood, those who are living in the rural areas, they can make use of this firewood, going to the forest areas and collecting the firewood, isn't it? But those people who are living in the urban areas, if they are in need of the firewood, they have to give money for buying that, isn't it? It commands a price. So generally speaking, this non-commercial source of energy is available at free of cost, but in the present situation, during certain times, they commands a price. But generally we can include them in the category of commodities which are available at free of cost. Then used for industrial and commercial purposes. Commercial sources of energy are used for industrial and commercial purposes, but non-commercial sources of energy are used for domestic and consumption purposes. Non-commercial, like firewood, cow dung, they are used for domestic and consumption purposes, household purposes, but the other one is used for commercial purposes and industrial purposes. So in a nutshell, we can differentiate commercial sources of energy and non-commercial sources of energy as follows. Okay, I hope it is clear to you. Now we will move on to the next division, that is conventional and non-conventional sources of energy. Conventional and non-conventional sources of energy. What is this conventional sources of energy? They refers to the source of energy which are in use since long and can be stored. They are used by the people even in the olden days. We have been using it for long time. That is known as conventional sources of energy. Example, coal and oil. The same topics you have learned in class 10, and you can just recollect what you have learned in your class 10 economics, in geography. So the conventional sources of energy, people have been using it for a long time, and the example you can write as coal and oil. They are non-renewable. That means once it is used, it will get exhausted. It takes long time for its formation. They are non-renewable resources of energy, and mainly industries make use of coal and oil. So these are very important points from the examination point of view. Conventional and non-conventional. Conventional sources of energy means which are in use since long and can be stored. Example, coal and oil. The point to be noted is they are non-renewable. The industries generally make use of coal and oil. Now, both commercial and non-commercial, the one which we discussed before, both commercial means the one which commands the price, non-commercial means the one which is available at free of cost. Both commercial and non-commercial sources of energy are called conventional sources of energy. That they comes under the category of conventional sources of energy. So both commercial and non-commercial sources of energy comes under, or they are called conventional sources of energy, and that is a very important point to be noted. So once again, conventional sources of energy, they are being used by the people for a long time. They are non-renewable. They are used by industries, example coal and oil. And the first division of energy that we learned, both commercial and non-commercial sources of energy, which commands and which do not command a price. Both of them comes under, they are called conventional sources of energy. Now, what is this non-conventional sources of energy? It refers to the sources of energy which have come to use only recently, just opposite of conventional. In conventional sources of energy, we explained that it has been used by the people even from the past years, isn't it? Long time people have been using it. But the non-conventional sources of energy, they are those sources of energy which are recently developed due to the technology that the human being has invented. They are developed recently. Let us see which are they. Solar energy, wind energy, biogas, tidal power, geothermal energy. All these you have learned in class 10. So these sources of energy are recently developed. Tidal energy, which is developed with the help of water in the sea waves, isn't it? So tidal energy, geothermal energy, then solar energy, wind energy, biogas, etc. are non-conventional sources of energy which has been recently developed. So that is a major difference between conventional and non-conventional sources of energy. And these non-conventional sources of energy are renewable resource of energy, just opposite of conventional sources of energy. They are renewable. They can be used again and again. Okay. Now, India has unlimited potential, to be noted. India has unlimited potential to produce this energy. Which energy? Non-conventional sources of energy, provided if we have a good technology. We are lacking in technology. If we have a better technology, we can make a good and effective use of this non-conventional sources of energy. So you recollect, non-conventional sources of energy means the sources of energy which are developed recently, like geothermal energy, wind energy, solar energy, tidal power, etc. Now they are renewable, which can be used again and again. So with the development of technology, all these sources of energy has developed recently. If we have a better technology, we can make efficient use of this non-conventional sources of energy, and India has got unlimited potential in developing this non-conventional sources of energy, provided if we have a good technology. Not used in industries because of heavy cost. This non-conventional sources of energy, they are not used in industries because of heavy cost. So its use is only limited in industries. It doesn't mean that it is not used in industries. Its use is very much limited because of its heavy cost. So this is the difference between conventional and non-conventional. Conventional is limited, non-conventional is abundant. With the technology, we can develop more and more. Conventional is non-renewable, like coal. Conventional is renewable, non-renewable. Non-conventional is renewable. Tidal energy, wind energy, can be used again and again. Conventional sources of energy pollute the atmosphere. That is a disadvantage. But whereas non-conventional sources of energy, they are pollution free. Compare the solar energy, isn't it? Now next is conventional sources of energy. It is very difficult to obtain because it is non-renewable, therefore it is expensive. But whereas India has unlimited potential to produce non-conventional sources of energy, and it is abundant also, therefore it is cheaper. But initial cost is very high. Initial installation cost is very high, but once it is being installed, it is cheaper. So that is a difference. So once it is being installed, initial cost is very high, but once it is installed, it becomes cheaper. Okay, so that is the difference between conventional and non-conventional sources of energy. So once again, conventional is limited, non-conventional is abundant, then conventional is non-renewable, non-conventional is renewable, then conventional sources of energy will pollute the atmosphere, but whereas non-conventional will not pollute the atmosphere. Then conventional, since it is scarce, its price is very high, but whereas non-conventional, since it is abundant, it is cheaper, but initial cost is high. That is why I told you as a last point, not use, limited use in industries because of heavy cost, isn't it? And here I have written it as cheaper. Why? Along with that, I have written one more point here. Initial cost is very high. So sometimes industries will not be able to bear that much high initial cost. So in that case, it becomes expensive. Apart from that, it is very cheaper because it is available abundantly. Therefore, that is why I have discussed the point like this, not used in industries, or you can also write limited use in industries because it is of heavy cost. Why it is heavy cost? Because its installation cost or initial cost is high, but after that it proves to be cheaper. That is the major difference between conventional and non-conventional sources of energy. Next, we will move on to the third division of the sources of energy. So far we have discussed commercial and non-commercial sources of energy, conventional and non-conventional sources of energy, and the next is primary and secondary source of energy. What is this primary and secondary source of energy? Primary source of energy, from the word primary itself, it is very clear they are direct source of energy, isn't it? Direct source of energy, and they are gift of nature. Example, coal, petroleum. They can be directly used. Okay, next is secondary source of energy. They results from the transformation of primary source. They cannot be used directly. They need some kind of transformation. But primary source of energy, they doesn't need any transformation, they are used directly as a gift of nature. But whereas secondary source of energy, they need some kind of transformation. Example, electricity produced from hydro energy, then nuclear energy. All these are the examples of secondary source of energy. So primary source of energy is directly used, but whereas secondary source of energy needs some kind of transformation. So primary source of energy, examples are coal, petroleum, which can be directly used, but whereas secondary source of energy needs some kind of transformation. Electricity produced with hydro power is an example for that. Okay, I hope the three division sources of energy is very clear and their difference is also very clear to you. Now next is the consumption pattern of energy in India. Now we have discussed commercial energy. There we have coal, then hydro energy, natural gas. Commercial energy is 74%, coal is 54% which is in use, oil 32%, natural gas 10%, hydro energy 2%. Okay. In non-commercial sources of energy, only 26 of total energy consumption is made in non-commercial sources of energy. So for the proper understanding to know about the sectoral pattern of commercial energy consumption in different sectors, how energy usage is done, to know about that, to get information regarding the use of energy in different sectors, you need to go through a table which is given in your textbook in page 8.8. The table number is 8.2. After going through the table, please make an analysis which sector is using more energy resources, which sector is using less energy resources, make a comparative study of the same. I hope it is clear to you. Thank you.